I can still hear that sound. The dull thud of a body tumbling down the stairs. 1, 2, 3. Then silence. The silence that changed everything. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night with that sound echoing in my head. It wasn't just a push. It was the end of a lie that lasted generations, and the beginning of another that I'll carry forever. No one will ever understand why I did what I did. No one knows who she really was when the doors closed. And now, as I sit in this empty park, I realize it might be time to tell everything. My name is Michael. I'm 18 years old, and I just got out of juvenile detention 3 months ago. 2 years inside feels like an eternity when you're a teenager. When you're 16 and commit something people call a crime, but to you was just survival. The whole world seems to conspire against you. They say I killed my grandmother. Technically, yes. I pushed her. She fell down the stairs. She died. The facts are that simple to outsiders. The model grandson killed the beloved neighborhood grandma. End of story, right? Wrong. Grandma Helen, as everyone called her, was the most admired person in our neighborhood. Homemade apple pies for neighbors, banana bread for church gatherings, wide smiles for strangers, sweet advice for anyone who needed it. An angel on earth, they said. If only they knew. I'm sitting in this park now, watching children play while their parents and grandparents watch with tenderness. It looks like a movie that was never part of my life. A movie where adults are really what they appear to be. Everyone judged what I did without knowing what happened inside that house. Without knowing who she was when no one was looking, without understanding what led me to do what I did that night. It's easy to judge when you only know the official version. It's easy to call me a monster when you don't know I was fighting against one, but I'm not here to justify myself or ask for forgiveness. I'm here to tell the truth. The truth no one wanted to hear during the trial. The truth that was buried with her but still lives in me like a wound that never heals. What would you do if you discovered that the person everyone loves is actually someone completely different behind closed doors? What would you do if you knew that person keeps secrets capable of destroying not just your life, but an entire family's? And what would you do if, in a moment of total desperation, you ended up becoming exactly the monster everyone believes you are? I'll tell everything from the beginning, but first I need to know one thing. If you're really paying attention to me, if you're really trying to understand what happened in that house, I need you to like this video right now, subscribe to the Traumatic Accounts channel, hit the notification bell, and comment where you're watching from. I need to know I'm not talking to myself, that someone is actually listening. Because what I'm about to tell is something I've never told anyone, not even the psychologists at the detention center. And believe me, after you hear this, nothing will be the same. I promise that when I finish telling this story, you'll understand why a 16-year-old boy with no history of violence decided to push his own grandmother down the stairs. More importantly, you'll discover what I found after she stopped moving at the bottom of that staircase. Something that changed everything I knew about my family, about myself, and about the true meaning of the word monster. I grew up in what looked like a normal family from the outside. My father, Richard, worked as an accountant at a mid-sized company. My mother, Camila, was an elementary school teacher. A small but comfortable house in a quiet suburb. A mixed-breed dog named Popcorn. Birthday parties with cake and soda. Nothing extraordinary, just a middle-class family trying to live the American dream. But there was something different about our family. My grandmother, Helen, my father's mother, had lived with us since I was 5. My grandfather had passed away, and according to everyone, she was too lonely to live in her own house. At first, it seemed wonderful having Grandma around. She made the best desserts, told the best stories, and always had that characteristic scent of talcum powder and lavender. To the outside world, we were the perfect example of a harmonious, united family. The neighbors envied our luck for having such a sweet lady living with us. Helen was known for her contributions to church events, the help she offered to families in need, and the wise advice she gave to anyone who needed it. Everyone adored her. The first signs that something was wrong began when I was about 8. Nothing drastic at first, just small changes in my parents' behavior. My dad, who used to be playful and talkative, became increasingly quiet and distant. My mom, who always had contagious energy, started to seem constantly tired and anxious. The conversations during dinner, which used to be lively, turned into tense moments, filled with cut-off sentences and meaningful glances. I also noticed that my parents rarely contradicted my grandmother. It was as if she had an invisible power over them. "Your grandmother knows what's best," my mom would say when I questioned any decision. "Don't argue with Grandma," my dad warned, with a tone that was more fear than respect. Around age 10, I noticed another pattern. Intense discussions between my parents and my grandmother when they thought I was asleep. Muffled voices escaping through the door cracks. My mother crying, my father begging, "Mom, please don't do this." And Helen's calm, almost whispered voice, responding with words I couldn't make out, but which had the power to silence them both immediately. The next morning, the atmosphere was heavy, but everyone pretended nothing had happened. My grandmother prepared breakfast with her usual smile, distributed kisses, and advised everyone to have a good day. It was as if that person from the night before had never existed. At 12, I began to notice the lies, small at first. My dad said he was working late, but the company would call looking for him. My mom claimed headaches to avoid attending school events. And strangest of all, money disappeared from my dad's wallet. Objects vanished from the house. And somehow my grandmother always suggested I might be responsible. "Michael has been acting strange," she would comment during dinner. "I saw him going through your wallet yesterday, Richard." Or, "I noticed that silver brooch of your grandmother's disappeared after Michael was in her room." I denied it, of course, but it was my word against hers. And who would believe a troubled teenager over the word of dear Grandma? It was during this time that my parents started taking me to psychologists. Defiant behavior, theft tendencies, adaptation problems. Labels that never made sense to me, but which my family and professionals seemed to accept easily. After all, it was simpler to believe the problem was me than to question the saintly Grandma Helen. My friends gradually drifted away, partly because my grandmother always found flaws in them. That Henry looks like he uses drugs. I don't like the way Lucas looks at things around the house. Partly because I started isolating myself, feeling there was something deeply wrong with me. Something everyone seemed to see except myself. At 14, things drastically worsened. My mom started drinking. Not much at first, just a glass of wine during dinner, then two, then an entire bottle. My dad spent less and less time at home. When questioned, he muttered something about work or meetings, but came back smelling of alcohol with deep dark circles under his eyes. And I became the perfect scapegoat. Any problem in the house was automatically my fault. Poor grades at school, arguments with teachers, small acts of rebellion. Everything confirmed the narrative my grandmother skillfully constructed. Michael was the problem, the black sheep, the difficult boy no one could control. The worst part is that I started to believe it too. I started behaving exactly as they expected me to. If I was already considered guilty anyway, why not commit the crimes? I started skipping classes, talking back to teachers, getting involved with people my parents definitely wouldn't approve of. During this time, my grandmother maintained her immaculate image before the community. She was the poor lady who, despite all her kindness, had to deal with a rebellious grandson. People congratulated her on her patience, for not giving up on me, for being an example of unconditional love. If only they knew what happened when the doors closed. One night, at 15, I overheard a particularly intense discussion between my parents and my grandmother. I decided to listen at the door, a dangerous but necessary habit to understand what was really happening. "I can't take these threats anymore, Mom," my dad said, his voice choked with tears. "We've done everything you asked for all these years." "Everything? You haven't done even half of what you should." My grandmother's voice, normally sweet to strangers, had a cutting tone that sent chills down my spine. "And if you think you can just get rid of me after all I know, you're very mistaken, Richard." "What more do you want from us?" my mother asked, her voice slurred from alcohol. "We've already given you our lives, our home, our money, our peace. You've even poisoned our son against us." "Michael is just another problem you created and couldn't solve," my grandmother responded. "And as for what I want what's rightfully mine. I want my share of the agreement." What agreement? I wondered mentally. What were they talking about? There is no money, my father almost shouted. I've told you 1,000 times it's all been spent. Then I suggest you find a way to get more. Her voice was cold, calculating. Or perhaps I should have a conversation with certain people about certain past events. I'm sure the police would love to know. The rest of the phrase was muffled by the sound of something breaking. I jumped back startled and ran back to my room before anyone discovered me listening. But that conversation kept hammering in my head for days. What secrets did my grandmother know? What agreement was this? And why did my parents seem so terrified by the possibility of her revealing something? I tried to ask indirectly in the following days, but was met with evasive answers and irritation. Don't meddle in adult matters, my father said dryly. We already have enough problems with your behavior. It was during this time that I began observing my grandmother more carefully. During the day, she maintained her usual routine, prepared meals, received visitors, went to church, smiled at everyone. But at night, when she thought no one was watching, I caught her going through my father's documents, rummaging through drawers, making mysterious phone calls in a low voice. Once I heard her say on the phone, "The boy doesn't know anything, but he could be useful. He already has the perfect image to take the blame if something goes wrong." Those words chilled me. She was talking about me. I would be used as a scapegoat for something more serious than small household thefts. Paranoia began to take over me. I started recording everything in a hidden diary. Suspicious behaviors, strange conversations, sudden mood changes. Something was deeply wrong in that house, and I seemed to be the only one who could see beyond the facade of a happy family. My parents, meanwhile, seemed increasingly distant and defeated. My mother increased her alcohol consumption to the point where she could barely teach. My father started showing physical symptoms of stress, hair loss, skin rashes, dramatic weight loss, and I sank deeper into the image they had created for me. The more they treated me like a problem, the more problematic I became. It was a vicious cycle I didn't know how to break. At school, my performance plummeted. The teachers, who once saw potential in me, now just shook their heads in disapproval. "It's a shame," I heard one of them tell the coordinator. "Michael could have gone so far. Now he's just another lost cause." Home and school became different prisons, but equally suffocating. The only place I found any relief was on the streets, with people who, like me, were considered lost causes. We weren't bad kids, just misunderstood, seeking anywhere a bit of the acceptance we didn't have at home. But even among them, I never felt completely part of the group, because deep down I knew something bigger was happening, something that involved my family and somehow directly threatened me. I just didn't know exactly what. Until a few weeks before my 16th birthday, I found something that would change everything. It was on a Sunday afternoon. The house was exceptionally quiet. My dad had gone out to take care of pending matters. My mom was sleeping, intoxicated from the previous night's alcohol. And my grandmother had gone to Mass as she did every Sunday. I decided to take advantage of this rare opportunity of privacy to investigate more deeply. If there were secrets in that house, I needed to discover them before they were used against me. I started with my grandmother's room. It was a meticulously organized environment, smelling of lavender sachets and full of religious trinkets, saints, angels, rosaries hanging on the walls. The perfect image for the devout lady everyone knew. I searched drawers, looked under the mattress, searched in all the obvious places without finding anything relevant. I was about to give up when I noticed something strange in the old wardrobe. One of the backboards seemed slightly misaligned. I pushed it and discovered a hidden space, and inside it, a metal box. My heart raced. With trembling hands, I took the box and opened it. Inside were documents, old photos, and a black-covered notebook, like a diary. I started with the photos. Most showed people I didn't know, some dating back decades, but one in particular caught my attention. My father, much younger, next to a man who looked a lot like him. On the back of the photo, an inscription, Richard and Robert, 1995. Robert. Who was Robert? My father had never mentioned any brother. I moved on to the documents, certificates, deeds, insurance policies, And then I found something shocking. A death certificate in the name of Robert Adams dated 1996. Cause of death: accidental drowning. The mother's name on the document was Helen Adams. He was my father's brother, a brother I never knew existed, a brother who had died a year before my birth. With increasingly trembling hands, I opened the diary. The first pages were quite mundane, records of a middle-aged woman about her daily life. But as I advanced in the reading, the tone changed dramatically. Richard keeps insisting it was an accident. What nonsense. I know what I saw that night. I know what he did to my Robert, and he will pay for it for the rest of his life. My stomach turned. What was my grandmother insinuating? That my father had something to do with his brother's death? I continued reading, each page revealing more of the macabre plan my grandmother had been executing for years. Camilla is getting weaker. A few pills in her tea and she sleeps like a baby. The doctor prescribed antidepressants. How convenient. She doesn't even notice when I substitute them for stronger doses. Richard is so busy trying to make money to pay me that he hardly notices his wife's condition. Perfect. I felt nauseous. My grandmother was drugging my mother. This would explain the erratic behavior, the growing dependence on alcohol, the health problems that never seemed to improve with any treatment. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. The boy is becoming a problem. Too curious, asks too many questions. I'm starting to wonder if I shouldn't use the same method I used with Robert. Accidents happen after all, and it would be poetic justice for Richard to lose a son as I lost mine. I read and reread that passage in disbelief. My grandmother was insinuating she would kill me as she suspected my father had killed my uncle. And more disturbing still, had she confessed, albeit implicitly, to causing Robert's accident? The pieces began to fit together. My parents' submissive behavior, the constant fear, the discussions about money and secrets. My grandmother was blackmailing my father, possibly with the threat of accusing him of his brother's death. And now I was in danger too. I photographed several pages of the diary with my cell phone and carefully put everything back in its hiding place. I barely had time to reorganize the room when I heard the front door open. My grandmother had returned from church. During the following weeks, I lived in a constant state of alert. I observed every movement of my grandmother with new eyes. The sweet smile now seemed sinister. The seemingly innocent comments about my behavior gained a threatening tone. The teas she insisted on preparing for my mother became poison in my eyes. I tried to alert my parents, but without success. When I mentioned having found documents about an uncle named Robert, my father turned pale and forbade me from touching the subject again. When I suggested my mother stop drinking Grandma's teas, she laughed nervously and said I was becoming paranoid like my father. I was alone in this battle, increasingly realizing the danger I was in. My grandmother was much more than a manipulative old lady. She was someone capable of coldly planning the destruction of an entire family for revenge. I began to notice other disturbing behaviors. She went through my things when I wasn't around, probably looking for the cell phone where I kept the diary photos. Once I caught her putting something in my school backpack. Later I discovered it was a pocket knife that was mysteriously found during a surprise inspection at school, almost resulting in my expulsion. She was methodically building a case against me, creating a history of problematic behavior that would make any future accusation plausible. If something happened to me, it would be easy to convince everyone it was an accident caused by my own risky behavior, or worse, a suicide by the troubled teenager. I started sleeping with the door locked and carefully checking my food. I also began documenting everything. Audio recordings of nighttime discussions, photos of medications I found hidden in my grandmother's belongings, detailed records of each suspicious behavior. During one of these surveillance nights, I captured something disturbing. My grandmother on the phone talking to someone about an insurance policy. "Yes, the policy is still in the boy's name," she said in a low voice. "Richard doesn't even know I put the kid as the beneficiary. No, don't worry. When it happens, I'll make sure the money gets to you. Consider it payment for services rendered in the Robert case." A chill ran down my spine. She had an insurance policy in my name. And who was the person on the other end of the line? Someone who helped her with my uncle's death? As the weeks passed, I noticed changes in my grandmother's behavior. She seemed more anxious, more aggressive in discussions with my father. Several times I heard her mention a date, June 15th, which, coincidentally or not, was 3 days after my 16th birthday. "By June 15th, I need the money, Richard," she said one night, in her most threatening tone ever. "Or else I'll have to use my plan B. And believe me, you won't like that at all." I tried to discover what would happen on that date, but found nothing conclusive. I just knew it represented some kind of deadline, and my father seemed absolutely terrified by its proximity. As the date approached, the tension in the house became almost palpable. My mother was practically incapacitated by alcohol and the medications my grandmother continued to provide. My father looked like a ghost, thin, pale, with deep dark circles and a constant tremor in his hands. And I lived in a state of constant hypervigilance. Every sound startled me. Every look from my grandmother seemed a silent threat. I slept little, ate poorly, and my street friends noticed the change. "You look like a zombie, dude," said Lucas, one of the boys I used to hang out with. "Is something wrong?" I almost told him everything, almost asked for help, but then I remembered the words in my grandmother's diary. Accidents happen. What if I involved other people and something happened to them too? I couldn't risk it. On the night before my birthday, I had a strange conversation with my father. He came into my room late at night, something he rarely did. He seemed nervous, agitated. "Michael," he said, sitting on the edge of my bed, "tomorrow is your birthday." "I know," I replied dryly. The relationship between us was so deteriorated that even the mention of my birthday sounded like an empty formality. I haven't been a good father," he continued, his voice breaking. "I haven't been a good father to you all these years, and I'm sorry for that." I remained silent, surprised by that sudden display of emotion. "I want you to know that whatever happens, it wasn't your fault. None of this was your fault." "What are you talking about, Dad?" I asked, a lump forming in my throat. He seemed to want to say more, but just shook his head, his eyes watering. "Just remember that, okay? It wasn't your fault." Before I could question him further, he got up and left, leaving me with a sense of dread. It sounded like a goodbye, as if he knew something terrible was about to happen. On my birthday, June 12th, there was no celebration. My mother was too sick to get out of bed. My father left early and did not return. Only my grandmother remembered the date, offering me a cake that I refused, fearing it was poisoned. "Don't be ridiculous, Michael," she said with her fake smile. "Why would I poison my only grandson on his birthday?" The tone was joking, but her eyes were cold as ice. The following days were torture. June 13th passed without incident, June 14th as well, and then came the dreaded June 15th. I woke up to the sound of a violent argument. My father had returned, apparently without the money my grandmother demanded. His voice was desperate, pleading. "Helen, for God's sake, I need more time. I'm almost getting the full amount." "Time?" Her voice was cutting like I had never heard before. "You've had 20 years, Richard. 20 years to pay your debt to me. It was an accident. How many times do I need to say it? Robert slipped. I tried to save him." "Lies!" Her scream echoed through the house. "You were always jealous of him, always wanted what was his, including that pathetic little woman who's now drowning in alcohol in your bedroom." I felt my blood boil. She was talking about my mother. "You poisoned her," my father accused. "All these years, the medications, the teas, you deliberately destroyed her." "I did what needed to be done," my grandmother replied coldly. "And now, since you couldn't fulfill your part of the agreement, I'll have to implement my alternative plan." "What are you going to do?" My father's voice was filled with fear. "The life insurance," she said simply. "The boy has a considerable policy. A tragic accident, a troubled teenager. No one will question it." I felt my body freeze. This was it. She was planning to kill me that day. The famous June 15th deadline wasn't for my father to get the money. It was the day she would execute her plan B if he failed. I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Quickly, I returned to my bed and pretended to be asleep. The door to my room opened slowly. "Michael." My grandmother's sweet voice filled the room. "Wake up, dear. I have a surprise for you." I opened my eyes slowly, feigning drowsiness. She was standing at the door, holding a steaming cup. "Special tea for the belated birthday boy." She smiled. "An old family recipe." I sat up in bed, trying to appear natural, despite the terror I felt. "Thanks, Grandma, but I'm not thirsty right now." "I insist." She took 2 steps in my direction. "It's tradition. Your father always had it on his birthday. Robert, too." Robert, the name of my dead uncle, used as a weapon. "Maybe later," I tried to buy time. "I need to take a shower first." Her smile faltered for an instant, but soon returned, even wider and more fake. "Of course, dear. I'll leave it here on your nightstand." "Don't let it get cold." She placed the cup near my bed and left, gently closing the door behind her. As soon as I was alone, I took the cup and poured its contents out the window. I wasn't going to drink anything that came from her hands, especially on this day. I quickly got dressed, trying to formulate a plan. I needed to get out of that house as soon as possible, but I also needed evidence. Concrete proof of what my grandmother was doing, what she had done to my Uncle Robert, to my mother, and what she planned to do to me. I took my cell phone and transferred all the diary photos to an email I sent to myself. Then, I wrote a message explaining the entire situation and scheduled it to be automatically sent to my history teacher, the only adult I minimally trusted, if I didn't deactivate the sending by the end of the day. I left the room cautiously. The house was silent. I went down the stairs looking for my parents. I found my mother unconscious in the bedroom as usual. My father was nowhere to be found. I was about to leave through the front door when I heard my grandmother's voice coming from the kitchen. "Going somewhere, Michael?" I turned slowly. She was sitting at the table, the black-covered diary open in front of her. My heart stopped for an instant. "Just going for a walk," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Interesting," she said, calmly leafing through the diary. "I noticed someone has been going through my things. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" "I don't know what you're talking about." I lied while mentally calculating the distance to the door. "Don't lie to me." Her voice changed abruptly, losing all artificial sweetness. "I know you were in my room. I know you saw this." She slapped her hand on the diary. "And I know you took photos." "And what if I did?" I challenged, realizing there was no longer any reason to pretend. "I have everything recorded. What you did to my uncle, to my mom, what you're planning to do to me." She rose slowly, a sinister smile forming on her lips. "No one would believe you, dear. You're just a troubled teenager with a history of lies and aggressive behavior. I am the respectable Grandma Helen, pillar of the community, example of virtue." "The evidence is in your own diary," I argued. "What diary?" she asked, picking up the notebook and bringing it closer to a lighter that was on the table. "This one that can turn to ashes in seconds? Besides, even if you have photos, who would believe you? They'd probably say you faked it all." She was right, I realized with horror. She had built her reputation and destroyed mine so methodically over the years that any accusation from me would seem like the delusion of a troubled teenager trying to defame his lovely grandmother. "What do you want?" I finally asked. "Why are you doing this to us?" She approached slowly, the diary still in one hand, the lighter in the other. "Justice," she answered simply. "Your father took my Robert from me, my perfect son, my pride. Did you know it was to protect him that I went to jail? That I took the blame for your grandfather's mistakes?" "What mistakes?" "Let's just say your grandfather had questionable businesses. When things got complicated, someone needed to take responsibility. I did that. I spent 3 years in prison to protect the family. And how did your father thank me? By killing my Robert. Dad said it was an accident." "Lies!" she shouted, hitting the table hard. "They were competing for that tramp, your mother. Robert had won her, but your father couldn't accept losing. That day at the lake wasn't an accident. I saw everything from the shore. I saw Richard holding Robert underwater. Her version completely contradicted what my father had said, but something in her eyes told me she genuinely believed this or had convinced herself over the years. So that's why you came to live with us? For revenge? For justice, she corrected. I made your father pay slowly, first financially. All the money he earned came to me. Then emotionally, I destroyed his marriage by slowly poisoning that woman. And now, she smiled disturbingly, I'm going to take from him what he took from me. A son! I stepped back, terrified. It won't work, I said, trying to buy time. I've sent the evidence to several people. If anything happens to me, the police will know exactly where to look. It was a bluff, but I needed to make her hesitate. Liar, she hissed. You're just like your father. Liar, manipulator, potential killer. I'm not like him, I responded automatically, but then realized what she was doing. For years she had planted this idea in my head that I was troubled, dangerous, defective, that I had inherited the worst characteristics from my father. You know what's most ironic? She continued, coming even closer. You're not even his son. What? I was paralyzed by the revelation. Your mother was already pregnant when she started dating Richard. He assumed the child was his, but actually, you are my Robert's son. I felt the world spin. Could it be possible? Would I be the nephew of the man I always believed was my father, son of the uncle I never knew? You're lying, I accused, but doubt had already been planted. Why would I lie about this? It's the only reason I allowed you to live all these years. You have my Robert's blood. But now, she sighed dramatically. You've become a greater threat than your usefulness. Like my father? He's not my father. You just said so. She dismissed it with a gesture. The important thing is that you know too much, and this, she raised the diary, needs to be destroyed. She lit the lighter and brought the flame closer to the notebook. In an impulse, I lunged forward to try to stop her. She retreated, climbing the first steps of the staircase leading to the second floor. Stay away, she warned, or I'll scream so loud the neighbors will hear. And who do you think they'll believe? The poor little grandma being attacked by her troubled grandson? Once again, she was right. She had cornered me perfectly. What do you want me to do? I asked, defeated. Her smile returned, satisfied with my submission. Drink the tea I prepared. It's quick and painless, I promise. Better than the alternatives I'm considering. And if I refuse? Her expression hardened. Then, I'll have to use less subtle methods, and believe me, it will look like an accident anyway. Maybe a tragic house fire while everyone slept, or perhaps a troubled teenager who, in a fit, killed the entire family before taking his own life. The threat wasn't just against me, but against my parents too. Even with all the problems, I couldn't let them die. I'll go get the tea, I finally said. Good boy, she smiled, coming down the steps she had climbed. I knew you'd be sensible. I walked slowly to the kitchen, desperately trying to think of a way out. She followed me at a safe distance, still holding the diary and the lighter. In the kitchen, I saw the kettle still hot and a clean cup beside it. I also noticed, for the first time, a small bottle of pills partially hidden behind the sugar canister. The material confirmation of everything I had suspected. Don't worry about that, she said, noticing my gaze. Those are for your mother, not for you. I prepared something special for you. I picked up the kettle with trembling hands and poured the water into the cup. She took a common-looking tea bag from her pocket and placed it in the hot water. How long? I asked, watching the liquid darken. To take effect. Minutes only. You'll feel drowsy, then you'll simply sleep forever. She spoke about my death with the same naturalness with which she discussed the weather or a cake recipe. And what will you tell people? How will you explain it? Oh, the story is already prepared, she replied, stirring the tea with a spoon. Poor Michael, always so troubled, finally succumbed to the depression he had been hiding. No one will suspect. especially with your history of problematic behavior and the suicide note they'll find. A note that you wrote? I've been practicing your handwriting for months. She smiled. I'm quite convincing. Everything had been meticulously planned. Every detail considered. She wasn't improvising. This was the plan B she mentioned, prepared long before in case my father couldn't get the money in time. The tea was ready. She pushed the cup toward me. Drink, she ordered, and don't try anything stupid. Remember, if something goes wrong with me, your parents will be next. I took the cup, feeling its warmth between my fingers. I brought it closer to my lips, pretending to blow to cool it down. Can I at least know one thing before? I asked, trying to buy a few more seconds. What? She asked impatiently. Is it true that I'm Robert's son? Or was that just more manipulation? Something in her eyes changed. A flash of humanity, of sadness. It was so quick I couldn't be sure. It's true, she finally said. You have his eyes. It was the first thing I noticed when I saw you as a baby. The same eyes as my Robert, which is why I couldn't immediately. Then why now? Why kill the son of your favorite son? Her expression hardened again. Because you've become just like Richard. Lying, meddling, threatening. His blood must have been stronger in the end. Or maybe, I risked, you've gone mad from living with your hatred. Maybe Robert really died in an accident, and you created this whole conspiracy in your mind to avoid accepting the truth. It was like lighting a fuse, her face contorted with fury. How dare you! She screamed, advancing toward me. I saw it! I was there! Richard killed my son! I took advantage of her momentary explosion to accidentally knock over the cup, spilling the liquid on the floor. You stupid kid, she growled, looking at the spilled tea. You think this will save you? I can make more. I know, I replied, slowly backing toward the stairs. But first I need you to see something. What? She asked suspiciously. The other evidence I have against you is in my room. It was a risky tactic, but I needed to get her away from the kitchen, away from the poisons and medications. If I could get her upstairs, maybe I could find an escape route. To my surprise, she agreed. Go ahead, she ordered, still holding the diary and the lighter. And no tricks. I began climbing the stairs, feeling her right behind me. My mind was working frantically. What would I do when we reached my room? There was no additional evidence. It was just an excuse. Halfway up the stairs, I had a desperate idea. I stopped abruptly, pretending to stumble. What now? She asked irritably. Nothing, I answered, turning to face her. I was just thinking about what would happen if I told my father the truth, that I'm not his son, but Robert's. Her face paled. He wouldn't believe you. Are you sure? Because according to your diary, you've been making threats about revealing the truth for years. What truth would that be if not this? I could see doubt in her eyes. The manipulator being manipulated. That doesn't matter anymore, she finally said. None of you will be alive long enough to find out. None of you. She really was planning to kill the entire family. You're not a justice seeker, I said, feeling anger grow inside me. You're just a killer. You killed Robert, didn't you? And now you want to finish the job by killing the rest of the family. Shut up, she shouted, advancing one step toward me. That's it, isn't it? Robert discovered something about you, about Grandpa's business you mentioned in the diary. He threatened to expose you and you killed him. No. She advanced another step, her face contorted with fury. Richard killed him. I saw it. You saw what you wanted to see, I continued, provoking, retreating one more step. You constructed this narrative to justify your revenge, but deep down, you know the truth. She was almost reaching me now, trembling with rage, the diary and lighter firmly held in her hands. The truth, she hissed, is that I'm going to end this cursed family today, starting with you. She advanced one more step, and at that moment, I did something that would change my life forever. It wasn't planned, it wasn't calculated, it was purely instinctive. I pushed. It was a quick, desperate movement. my hands against her shoulders, applying just enough force to unbalance her. Her eyes widened in surprise. The diary and lighter fell from her hands, and then, in slow motion, she began to fall. 1, 2, 3 steps, her body toppling backward at an impossible angle. A scream cut through the air. Hers or mine, I can't say. And then came the sound that haunts my nightmares, the dull thud of a body hitting the wooden floor. Then silence. I stood paralyzed in the middle of the staircase, unable to move, unable to fully comprehend what I had just done. Seconds or minutes passed, I can't say. Finally, I found the strength to slowly descend the steps. She was lying at the foot of the stairs, in a strange, unnatural position. Her eyes still open, fixed on emptiness. A pool of blood was slowly forming beneath her head. "Grandma," I called weakly, knowing there would be no response. I cautiously approached and knelt beside her. There was no pulse, no breathing, just that empty, accusing look. It was at this moment that I noticed something fallen near her body. It wasn't the diary or the lighter. It was an envelope that had apparently been hidden between the pages of the notebook and had come loose during the fall. With trembling hands, I picked up the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and an old photograph. The photo showed my grandmother much younger, next to 2 young men who appeared to be in their early 20s. One of them was clearly my father. The other, I presumed, was Robert. Both smiled at the camera, arms around each other's shoulders, the perfect image of united brothers. I unfolded the letter. It was addressed to my grandmother, dated 1996, a few days before Robert's death. "Mom, I know you won't understand or accept this, but I need to distance myself. The things I've discovered about our family's past, about what you and Dad did, I can't pretend I don't know anymore. Richard has no idea, and I want it to stay that way. He has always idealized you and doesn't deserve to have that image destroyed. It's better that only one of us carries this burden. I'll be at the lake this weekend to say goodbye before I leave. Please don't make this harder than it already is. With love, despite everything, Robert." I read the letter several times, trying to process what it meant. Robert had discovered something about the family's past, something serious enough to make him want to distance himself. He was going to the lake to say goodbye before leaving and ended up dying there. Accident or not, it was clear my father hadn't killed him as my grandmother insisted. And what about the diary, the accusations, the threats, the meticulous revenge plan? Were they delusions of a mind disturbed by guilt and the pain of loss? Or was there indeed a dark secret that Robert discovered, something involving my grandmother and my deceased grandfather? I picked up the fallen diary near the body. The last pages contained something I hadn't seen before. A confession. Not about Robert's death, but about something else. He said he loved me, that we were special. We were only 14, but he swore we would be together forever. When I got pregnant, his parents made the arrangement. They married me to Anthony, a much older man who agreed to assume the child in exchange for financial benefits. Anthony never knew that Robert's real father was his own younger brother. The narrative continued, revealing a web of incest, blackmail, and financial crimes that my grandparents had committed over decades. Robert had apparently discovered all of this and planned to distance himself from the family, not run away with my father's girlfriend, as my grandmother had made me believe. The truth, as always, was much more complex and darker than I could have imagined. Sitting there beside my grandmother's body, holding the evidence of decades of lies and manipulation, I was overcome by an overwhelming feeling of horror and relief at the same time. The monster who had terrorized our family for years was dead. By my hands. The sound of the front door opening snapped me out of this trance. My father entered, looking exhausted and defeated. When his eyes found the scene, his mother fallen on the floor, me kneeling beside the body, the diary and letter in my hands, he froze. "Michael, what happened?" The words got stuck in my throat. How to explain the inexplicable? How to summarize everything I had discovered, everything that had happened? She fell, was all I could say. My father approached slowly, as if moving through water. He knelt on the other side of the body, gently touched her face, and then noticed the papers in my hands. "What is this?" Silently, I handed him Robert's letter and the last pages of the diary. I watched his face as he read, understanding, horror, and finally grief taking over his features. "All these years," he murmured, tears beginning to stream down his face. "She blamed me for something I never did, made me pay for a crime I never committed. She wanted to kill me," I finally said. "She had been planning it for weeks, the tea, the poison. She said I was Robert's son, not yours. Said she was going to kill all of us today." My father raised his eyes to me, a mixture of indecipherable emotions in his gaze. "Robert's son?" I swallowed hard. "Is it true? Is he my biological father?" He looked again at the papers in his hands, then at his mother's body, as if seeking answers that could no longer be given. "No," he said finally. "It's impossible. Robert and your mother never... Besides, the dates don't match. He was already dead when your mother and I met." "So she lied about that too," I stated, feeling a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. "She lied about many things," my father sighed heavily, "and I allowed it. Allowed her to poison our family for years, out of fear of what she might do, what she might reveal." "What do we do now?" I asked, looking at the body. My father was silent for a long moment, his gaze lost at some distant point. "We call the police," he said finally. "We tell the truth." "The whole truth?" I asked, fear evident in my voice. He looked me in the eyes. "Not all of it, just enough." In the hours that followed, we told our version of the facts. A terrible domestic accident. My grandmother, already elderly, had slipped on the stairs. I was nearby. I tried to hold her but couldn't. "A tragedy," the police officer said. "A regrettable accident." No one questioned much. Helen was known and respected in the community. Why would they doubt she had slipped on a staircase? Accidents happen every day. The diary and the letter disappeared before the authorities arrived. My father burned them along with the bottle of pills and any other evidence of Helen's manipulations. Some truths, we decided, were too heavy to be shared. At the funeral, the church was packed. People cried for the saint they had lost. They talked about her kindness, her generosity, her pure heart. We remained silent, carrying our secret like an invisible stone on our shoulders. In the weeks that followed, I noticed subtle changes at home. My mother, slowly removed from the medications my grandmother had been administering, began to improve, first physically, then emotionally. My father seemed to have lost an enormous weight. He still carried guilt and sadness, but also a kind of newly discovered freedom. As for me, I had pushed my grandmother down the stairs, intentionally or not, had taken a life. Even knowing she was planning to kill me and possibly my entire family, even understanding it was an act of desperation and self-defense, the weight of that action would stay with me forever. But there was also another equally disturbing discovery: how easily I had accepted and participated in the cover-up. How quickly I had learned to lie to the police, to the neighbors, to everyone. How in a matter of hours I had transformed from victim to perpetrator, and then to accomplice in an elaborate fraud. Perhaps, I thought during the sleepless nights that followed, I wasn't so different from her. After all, perhaps that ability to manipulate, to hide the truth behind an acceptable facade, was indeed a family legacy, passed not through blood, but through example. 2 weeks after the funeral, I was arrested. A neighbor had recently installed security cameras and captured a partial image of what happened through the side window. It didn't show the entire discussion, didn't reveal the threats, just the fateful moment. My hands on her shoulders, the push, the fall. My father tried to take the blame, to say he was there, that it was he who pushed her, but the image, although not perfectly clear, showed someone with my height, my build, someone too young to be my father. I was tried as a minor, a small mercy. During the trial, some of Helen's abusive behaviors came to light. Not all, not the worst, but enough to establish a context of prolonged psychological abuse. My father testified about how she manipulated the family, about the medications she administered to my mother without her knowledge, about the financial and emotional control she exercised over all of us. It wasn't enough to acquit me, but it mitigated the sentence. 2 years in a juvenile detention center with mandatory psychological counseling. During this time, I discovered something about the letter we found next to my grandmother's body. My father reluctantly finally confirmed what I had suspected. He himself had written it, imitating his deceased brother's handwriting. A last desperate attempt to bring peace to the family, to break the power Helen exercised over everyone through her lies. I thought if she believed Robert had discovered the family secrets on his own, maybe she would stop blaming me for his death, he explained during a visit. It was a stupid idea, I know, but at that moment it seemed the only way out. Thus, another layer of complexity was added to our family story of lies and manipulations. Even trying to escape Helen's webs, my father had resorted to the same tactics she used: forgery, deception, psychological manipulation. The toxic cycle that permeated our family was deeper than any of us wanted to admit, and I, willing or not, had become part of it. The 2 years I spent in the detention center were paradoxically the most stable of my life. Away from my family's manipulations and lies, I found a predictable routine, clear rules, and direct consequences for my actions. For the first time, I knew exactly what to expect from each day. The psychological counseling, initially seen as just part of the sentence, became an anchor. Dr. Mason, my therapist, was the first person to really listen without judging, the first to see beyond the troubled teenager everyone believed I was. "What happened doesn't define you," she told me in one of our first sessions. "Your future actions do." During those years, I learned to process the trauma, to understand the patterns of abuse I had normalized throughout my life. I learned about psychological manipulation, gaslighting, and how to identify toxic behaviors, tools I wished I had years before. My parents visited me regularly. My mother, now sober and lucid, was almost a stranger to me. The sparkle had returned to her eyes. Her smile had become genuine again. Sometimes it was difficult to reconcile this vibrant and loving woman with the apathetic shadow that had inhabited our house for so many years. My father had changed too. The weight of guilt and fear he had carried for decades had been partially lifted. He finally sought help for his own traumas, for the unresolved grief over his brother's death, for the guilt he felt for having allowed his mother to destroy our family for so long. None of us came out unscathed from that house, that family, that story. But we were all, in our own way, trying to rebuild our lives. When I finally left the detention center 3 months ago, I found a different world waiting for me. My parents had moved to another neighborhood, away from the memories and curious looks of the old neighbors. A smaller, more welcoming house without stairs. I also found a different family, not perfect, far from it, but one where lies were no longer the common language, where secrets no longer suffocated every interaction. During my time at the center, my parents went through intensive therapy. My father finally confronted the years of manipulation and abuse he suffered at the hands of his own mother. My mother, freed from the drugs my grandmother had secretly administered, rebuilt her physical and mental health. They remained together, united now, not by fear, but by a shared understanding of how they survived hell together. Sometimes when we're sitting at the dinner table, I realize how strange it is to talk normally, without tension, without fear, that at any moment a verbal bomb might explode and destroy everything. There are still moments of uncomfortable silence, subjects no one knows exactly how to approach, mainly what happened on that staircase. My parents never directly asked me if it was accidental. I think they prefer to believe it was. And on certain days, I can almost convince myself of that too. Almost. I got a job at a small bookstore. The owner, an elderly man named Charles, doesn't ask questions about my past. Maybe he knows. Maybe he doesn't. What matters is that he gave me a chance when most wouldn't. In the back of the bookstore, there's a small table where I spend my free time writing. Not fiction, just thoughts, reflections, attempts to understand what happened and why. Maybe one day I'll turn it into something more, or maybe it's just for myself, a way to exorcise the ghosts that still visit me on the darkest nights. The hardest part was facing the looks. After my story leaked to the local press, I became a kind of morbid urban legend. The kid who killed his grandma. People whisper when I pass by, pretend not to look, but they do. Some even cross the street. I don't blame them. If I were them, I would probably do the same. I have psychological counseling twice a week. Dr. Harper says I'm progressing well, but it takes time to process such deep traumas. She says the fact that I recognize the moral ambiguity of what I did, the need for self-defense mixed with the horrible reality of having taken a life, is a healthy sign. It would be more concerning if I saw everything in black and white. I still don't know if I believe that. I still don't know if there's a gray area when it comes to pushing someone down the stairs. There are moments when the weight of what I did is almost unbearable. Nights when I wake up screaming, reliving those terrible seconds when her hands lost their grip, when her body began to fall. Moments when I think I should still be locked up, that 2 years was too little for what I did. But then I remember what I found after the fall. The letter, the diary, the evidence of decades of manipulation, psychological abuse, blackmail. I remember that she was planning to kill me that same day, that she would probably do the same to my parents. I remember that in an alternative version of this story, it could be me at the bottom of the stairs, and she would continue to destroy lives with impunity, hidden behind her facade of sweet grandma. Does that bring me comfort? Not exactly, but it gives me context. And context, I've been learning, makes all the difference. Some people ask if I regret it. It's a complex question. Do I regret having reached that situation? Absolutely. Do I regret having pushed? Honestly, I don't know. If I hadn't, I might not be here to tell this story. Maybe none of us would be. What I do know is that push changed everything. It broke the cycle of abuse that extended for generations in our family. It exposed truths that, although painful, needed to come to light. And in a way, it freed us, my parents and me, from a prison we didn't even realize we were inhabiting. Does that justify what I did? I'm not sure. I don't know if anything could justify it. All I know is that I carry that moment with me every day and will continue to carry it for the rest of my life. If there's anything I've learned from all this, it's that real monsters rarely look like monsters. They have sweet smiles, make homemade pies, are admired by the community. And that sometimes when we fight against monsters, we run the risk of becoming a bit monstrous ourselves. Also, no one comes out unscathed from a story like mine. Not the victim, not the perpetrator, especially when you are both at the same time. So here I am, sitting in this park, watching the world continue to spin. Despite everything, people pass by, smile, live their lives with no idea of what happens behind the closed doors of seemingly normal houses, not knowing that the quiet boy on the park bench once pushed someone down the stairs. I'm 18 years old, but I feel much older, as if I've lived several lives in just one. Life before discovering the truth about my grandmother. Life during the 2 years in the detention center, and now this life that I'm trying to build from the ashes of the previous one. I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to completely forgive myself, or if I should. I don't know if people who learn my story will be able to see beyond it, to see the complete human being and not just the act that defined me. But I know that I'm trying every day, every hour, every minute, trying to find a path forward that honors the truth of what happened without being completely consumed by it. And if you've made it this far and understood what I went through, if you can see beyond the monster the newspapers painted, I need you to like this video, subscribe to the Traumatic Accounts channel, hit the notification bell, and comment what time it is where you're watching from. It might seem silly, but it means a lot to know I'm not alone in this journey, that there are people who listen to my complete story, and not just the sensationalist excerpts that leak to the media. Perhaps my account can help other people recognize the signs of manipulation and abuse before it's too late. Maybe it can make someone seek help before reaching the point of desperation that I reached. Or perhaps it serves only as a reminder that human stories are rarely simple, rarely have clearly defined heroes and villains. This is my story. The story of the boy who discovered his beloved grandmother was a monster. Of the boy who became a monster to survive. Of the man I'm now trying to become beyond all these labels. Thank you for listening.